Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is the Tier 1 podcast. We are joined today by a very special guest in the studio. Henry Winter, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you for inviting me down to where all the magic happens.
If you want to call it magic, Ronaldo Brown here, of course, as well.
I'm doing well. It is magic. He called it the lair.
The lair.
Walking down here.
Yeah, it is in a basement, so it's somewhat like a lair, a grotto. We'll take any words you need for it, really. But we want to obviously talk about Manchester United, a little bit about transfers, about the future. It's a strange position we're in at the minute with United because it's a mixture of sort of some of the worst feeling about the club that I've ever known, and some of the greatest anticipation and potential about the club at the same time. We've got the new manager coming in, but it couldn't be worse right now. Looking at Ten Hag, what kind of job does he have on his hands? Because you've got a fan base that is desperate and exasperated, and a play group that almost seem the same. Like, what has he got to do here at Manchester United?
I thought you said it was a playground that seems the same. I mean, it seems when you look at the attitude of one or two players, you do question that. I think what all this shows is just how huge Manchester United are. I mean, from a media perspective, if you run a Manchester United story, it just goes off the scale. So the time to worry with a club is apathy. The passion around Manchester United is huge. We saw it in the demonstrations last year. We've seen with some of the protests this year. You've only got to go on social media, mainstream media, you guys. It's absolutely huge. So when people say, well, Manchester United are in crisis, well, you've still got a training ground, you've still got a ground, you've still got, you've got terrible owners, everyone accepts that. But the passion is huge there. And talking to one or two of the sort of the United players that you get to know down the years, recent ones, current ones, they talk about the noise around the club, the huge noise. And that obviously, that is a pressure. And you can see that whereas teams who used to go to Old Trafford, you could see them almost like freeze a little bit in the tunnel because of the fear factor under the Ferguson era. Now that seems to be in the Manchester United players, and that's one of the first things that Ten Hag's got to do. It's about changing the mindset, and that, I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing to say. It's not simply about changing the mindset and the culture in the dressing room, but throughout the whole club. There's so many good people at Manchester United, but you've got I don't need to tell you this, but you've got this pervasive element with the owners at the top, the Glazers, and I think they have created a culture at the club which is actually almost seems like money first, football second. And Ten Hag, who with his Ajax background, which is all about football and glory and the ethos of Johan Cruyff, I think he will come in and change that.
So you believe he's kind of got the ability to overcome the Glazers, do you believe? Everything
that I heard about, I know about Ten Hag from sort of having covered Ajax, having covered a bit of his career and talking to Dutch journalists and Dutch players, he is the right man at the right time, partly because I'm a big Pochettino fan. I like Pochettino, but I just think that everything that Manchester United seemed to need, and if you talk to people within Manchester United, was the type of person they were going for, was really three things. They wanted someone who was a winner, someone who had a record of winning trophies, and Ten Hag has got that more than Pochettino, even with respect to the French league. Someone who's got a record for playing attacking football, whether it's 4-2-3 or whether he's playing with two pivots, Ten Hag does that. And then also promoting youth, which your great club has done, going back to the 30s. It's a phenomenal achievement, as you know. So, and I think, and Ten Hag has done that because that's the Ajax way. So I think all of those, for me, pointed to Ten Hag and why he would be a good fit. But the squad needs a clear out. The culture needs changing. And that is not, Ranić, I'm not a huge fan of his tactics, his substitution, the mindset that he's got with the players. He hasn't really addressed that. But every press conference, I think you almost need to keep Ranić on for his press conference because, he sits there and he speaks the truth. And I think as long as people heed that. But the disconnect you've got at your club is that I don't think the Glazers really listen.
Do you think that Ten Hag completely understands, or is it even possible for him to understand quite the scale of the job he's taking here? Because, like you said, it's not just the situation with the Glazers, the situation with the players, but the complete swarm, the media buzz around Manchester United all the time. it's another level to every other club, isn't it? And I think like it's almost a thing in sort of boxing and fighting where you get to that championship fight, and it's not just that you're fighting against the best fighter in the world, but you're fighting against the media. You've got to do this press conference, that engagement, this engagement. Do you think Ten Hag fully understands the scale of the job he's taking here? Because Ajax is a big club, but United's another beast entirely, isn't it?
I remember talking to Jose Mourinho about the pressures of being Manchester United manager, and were you able to go and have a drink with the opposing manager, which is a great sort of English-British tradition. And he said it's very difficult, because if you're a Manchester United manager, you have to go and talk to, you've got the flash interviews, you've got the broadcasters, you've got sort of nutters like me in the print media, you've got the digital media, you've got radio, you then have to go and see certain sponsors, you've got man of the match presentations, maybe go into 1 or 2 lounges. I'm not sure whether Mourinho actually did that. But so the pressure on his time, so that hour, that golden hour after a game, when really he should be with the players and maybe with the opposing manager, having a drink, whatever, that doesn't exist really for a Manchester United manager, ironically, because it was a great Ferguson tradition. I mean, your point is absolutely right. Ten Hag will have talked to Van der Sar, he will have talked to people that he trusts about the size of Manchester United, but I don't think until he sits in Sir Alex Ferguson's famous swivel chair and actually, I remember talking to David Moyes. We talked to a group of us, and he was so excited sitting in Alex Ferguson's chair. And he was just almost like sort of swinging around with this excitement. Yeah. And then with about sort of 6 months' time, he was looking sort of 10 years older. So I think the pressure of it is huge. But he's tough. I mean, I wouldn't want to cross him.
Yeah, because we spoke about, there's a lot of suggestion that will Ten Hag literally get the time to succeed, because United are at a bit of a crossroads now where it's probably on the verge of a rebuild. That's going to be necessary. United have gone 5 years without winning any trophies. Fans are getting a little bit impatient. I'm guessing the Glazers aren't very impatient because they're seeing the commercial side still coming through. But one of the worries is, will Ten Hag actually get the time to succeed? Because there's a sense of desperation where we need to win now, we need to win quick, and that might not be a quick fix with the likes of City and Liverpool thriving.
I think he will probably try and juggle the process of change with a desire to get a trophy. But it's not a quick fix. It is, you talk about changing the dressing room. How many of if you were starting over, how many of those players would you really keep? De Gea and maybe 3 or 4 others. You've got some good kids coming through, as you always do here. But it just needs a whole reboot. But one thing I'll say, I mean, I'm very lucky in my job, is that I go to all grounds and you sense the level of support. And I think fair play to Manchester United, given the headlines, given the lack of performances by a lot of the players, given the whole need for this place to have, you talk about rebuild, stadium needs it. Carrington, which was state of the art when it opened, that still needs a bit more work. Obviously, that the squad does. There's so much work that needs to be done. But actually, I've always found the fans inside the ground and your amazing away support, they've actually stuck pretty much behind the team. I know there've been a few issues with Maguire and Pogba, but I was talking to one of the United players about, it was before Christmas, and he was talking about the difference between listening to the buzz from Stretford and from within the stadium, and then the different buzz, slightly more electric, aggressive buzz on social media. And if I was Ten Hag, the first thing I would do is tell the players no phones in the dressing room, because you know what players are like. They go in immediately after the final whistle. They will go in online and they'll digitally and just sort of see what people are saying about them. And that, if you're not strong enough, you see it does crush people.
Do you think it's possible though for playing for United? How can you exactly kind of block out that outside noise? I think it's nigh on impossible.
Well, I think you have to do certain things. I mean, I don't like seeing big Instagram pictures from the dressing room. I've covered some games in MLS. I thought it was wrong to have, I know I'm very much on my own on this, but as a journalist going into the dressing room, I think that place should be sacrosanct. And it was almost after Ferguson retired that Manchester United ramped up their social media and the players were taking selfies and group photos in the dressing room. I just think that you've got to make that dressing room special again. You can't have everything open to the world. And I think they will try and block out the noise. Problem is, obviously, is that it's not. If you play for Manchester United, it's a little bit like playing for a big international team, probably even bigger. But England and Brazil, probably those two of the big, intense interest countries. That if you make a mistake for, say, like a mid-table Premier League club, it's of an issue for your club, for the surrounding area. If you make a mistake at Manchester United, it's national, international news, and it has ramifications, not simply for you, but for your partner, for your families, the pressure and all that. And in fact, it's like a player misses a penalty for England. You've seen the reaction there. It's brutal, it's intense. And I just think that when Manchester United go into the markets, they will do this summer. You always seem to buy, and it's great from a media perspective, but there's almost a sort of Hollywood purchase that the Glazers like. What you want, a tough mentality. I mean, if I can bring Liverpool up, the character research they do on their players, they make sure they get good citizens. So you buy tough characters like a Robertson, like a Van Dijk, like an Alisson, Luis Diaz, who's coming to hit the ground running. You probably don't want to hear this, but these are the type of characters.
It's not nice.
But you know what? Yeah. But look, you're the biggest club in the country, in terms of interest, and I'll say that as a neutral. But you've got to get the tough characters in. Everyone talks about the talent and the technique, and it's about mindset with Manchester United. 3
of the players who've been linked with this summer, sort of to that point, have been Kane, Rice, Calvin Phillips. Yeah. All players who, whilst they're good players, Kane and Rice, I think in a category maybe slightly above Phillips, they're very much the who would the fans pick type players. They don't seem to scream best scouting network in the world. They're a little bit route one to me. And I think we've just seen 2 scouts sort of sacked or left or removed or whatever word you want to use from Man United. Is there an understanding that at some point United need to find the Salah from Roma or the Robertson or these or even someone like Bernardo Silva, who cost a lot of money but wasn't a world star when he was bought? We always want to buy these big name, big faces. Is there a change on the horizon there? Because it seems like Rangnick, as you said, is honest about everything. He's talking about this layer, that layer, that layer. Even McTominay's talking about how many problems are above them. Yeah. The recruitment seems to just be so basic compared to the other top clubs in the country.
But those 3 players you mentioned, I don't know where they're going to move. I don't know whether they're contractual situations, whether there's renegotiations, whatever. Maybe it's, with West Ham, if they get to the Champions League, whatever happens in Europe. They would absolutely walk into your team.
Yeah, definitely would.
Kane would walk into your team as a number 9 or as a number 10. Absolutely. I know everyone loves Bruno Fernandes, but tactically indisciplined. No, and Ten Hag will address that. That's all little individual tactical things that he will come in and sort out, because he won't have Bruno Fernandes wandering around all over the place. No. There's a difference between total football and total chaos. Whereas Declan Rice, I know people like Fred, and Fred may well train on under him. McTominay, he's an athlete. We've seen some of his good performances, but there's a consistency issue and there's a mistake in him. Declan Rice would come in. Declan Rice got the personality to play for this club, and that is absolutely huge. You look at if you talk to Manchester United people, they say they look at training and they know whether someone's got the personality to actually play for Manchester United. You shouldn't have to wait till that first training session at Carrington, when whoever it is pinging balls in you in the rondo beforehand, and whether you can actually cope with it. That sort of knowledge must be acquired. You mustn't. And Declan Rice has got the personality to step in here, and he would improve you immediately. Whether it's a defensive midfielder or as a box-to-box, he needs to add to his goal threat. Anyone who knows Declan Rice knows he's got the personality to play for this club. Not sure necessarily he will leave West Ham, but money talks. Manchester United still, whatever anyone says, are still a big pull. Harry Kane would walk into your team. Now, I know you've got lots of strikers, and they're issues with 1 or 2 strikers at the moment, but Harry Kane would walk in. Not completely sure he's going to leave Tottenham Hotspur. No. And Calvin Phillips as well. That's quite a move. Leeds to Manchester United. It's worked for you in
Dan James.
Yeah. Dan James. It didn't work out too badly with Cantona. Calvin Phillips, I don't know whether he'll leave Leeds United, but he's got that personality. So coming back to that central thing on the scouting, mind as well as their footballing ability. Aaron Wan-Bissaka has an element of footballing ability, but his mindset needs to be worked on. And the other thing that these players, and Ten Hag is going to have to be key on this when he meets players, is for this young talent, Kane's obviously 28, 29, they have to understand that Manchester United isn't going to be a graveyard for talent, which it has been. How many of the players have you bought in the last few years have actually really trained on?
Yeah, that was something that we have mentioned in the podcast, really. How many players actually come to United in recent times and improve? When you see players go to City or you see them go to Liverpool under Klopp and Pep, you seem to kick on and on and on. And even if they don't hit the ground running initially, they eventually become better players. But alluding to what Joe said about Kane and Rice, they're pretty safe bets, but they come with heavy price tags. And United are at a stage where there's many players and there's many positions that we need to fill. If you fill them with a Declan Rice or a Harry Kane, then you basically used up most of your transfer budget for one window, and then you can't fix the other areas. But you're talking about scouting, where United very rarely go outside Europe, don't really go into South America, don't go into the Americas to look for players. And maybe United need to try and find a diamond in the rough, because if you do go for Declan Rice, who will probably be brilliant, he's costing 150 million, and then you can't kind of fill around him, and then you're basically back to square one, or you've got to wait to Jan or the next summer, and that's probably the issue.
But then you then have to front up the Glazers and say, this is not... I mean, Ranieri has talked about it. He said, you know, this is... I mean, every time I listen to him, you know, he's almost sort of actually reducing the amount of players who can actually stay. I think he said he sort of needs 7 or 8 new players. 7 or 8 new players. And of course, with English players, there's an extra weight in terms of the finance. Manchester United will be an agent's frenzy this summer, and that's something that is going to be an issue, as it always is with Manchester United. But if the Glazers are serious about backing Ten Hag, you can't just back him with words. You can't just back him with some nice social media when he arrives. You have to back him with money. And you say, look, even if you've got 2 major players. So you've got a Declan Rice, okay, 150, whatever he's going to go for. If West Ham they'll negotiate hard, but you need a player like him. I take your point about you've got to scout, you've got to improve your scouting all over the place, but clubs should know these young players, these talents coming through. So maybe it's a balance between getting a Declan Rice and getting a good kid out of somewhere.
Do you believe that because United is a big club that you mentioned, they aren't really able to take the kind of gambles on players like that? They've got to go for the more safe bets, the more immediate impacts, rather than take a chance on a kid in Brazil, a kid elsewhere, a kid in Africa possibly.
Yeah, but there are some kids who've got that mentality at 17, 18. You know, you look at Patrick Vieira's maybe not the best example because he had 1 or 2 sort of fallow years, but there are individuals who came through. And, you know, why couldn't you go out and find an N'Golo Kante like Leicester did, or Riyad Mahrez? Look at those. You know, Kante's now a world champion. You know, he's won a couple of titles. Fantastic player. So look, there is better scouting clearly, and I think in fairness to Manchester United, and I understand it's a bonfire of the vanities and everything is run. You know, Darren Fletcher understands football. You know, he's played, he understands the culture, he understands the standards of this club. John Murtough understands the standards that are required. So there are, you know, these are not, you know, Statler and Waldorf behind the scenes just sort of, you know, picking players. You've got some intelligent people, and maybe Mitchell will come in as well. But Ten Hag has to set the tone, and if anyone thinks that you're going to even begin addressing the deficiencies in the squad with 150 million quid. I mean, not a fan of the Glazers, but that is even more nonsense from them. They have to dig deep this summer.
On that sort of structure above the manager, because for so long it's basically seemed like it's been manager, Woodward, Matt Judge, Glazers. Like that's maybe how it's been fed to the fans, or maybe that was the case. But now we are seeing Fletcher brought in, we've got Murtough, then you've got Arnold. There is talk of either an assistant director of football or a head of recruitment, or maybe another person coming in there. I don't think Richard Arnold's got much of a background in football, he's more the business side. But John Murtough worked for the Premier League and has done other things. Do you think we are taking some steps towards having people who know how to make footballing decisions making footballing decisions now? Or I'm trying to find a reason to be optimistic.
But listen to everything that you've said there is completely accurate, but hasn't actually been the case at Manchester United. What you're saying is, why don't we have football people making footballing decisions?
Exactly.
And that is absolutely huge. Ed Woodward, brilliant at money making. Arnold, again, similar. But keep them out of Carrington. Obviously bring them in for when contracts need to be negotiated or you're signing a player, but let the football people make the decisions. You're not the only club, and you're not the only footballing institution in this country who has that flaw. Look at the FA. The FA, when they pick the next England manager, it will still be a bunch of suits picking it. You need more football expertise on the board.
Talking about sort of transfers then, and who United bring in, obviously it's a big thing every summer. We're going to be linked with everyone that Ralph Rangnick has ever looked at or played under or been through the Red Bull system.
Anyone Dutch.
His whole team's covered. His whole team's covered.
You know, we might even still have a few sort of Solskjaer transfers that are in the background as well. who do you see United going after this summer? Because there's rumours of a whole sort of new spine, a new centre-back, Pau Torres and Jules Koundé, and a few different people mentioned. A new midfielder seems almost, ludicrously necessary at this point with how many times we've avoided that. And then the striker situation. Edinson Cavani's leaving. Mason Greenwood may never play for Manchester United again. And Cristiano Ronaldo's 37. Like you said, 150 million doesn't really touch the sides. But where do you see United investing this summer?
Spine, clearly. Absolutely huge. I mean, I assume David De Gea will be your player of the year. Will he? I can't see.
Probably.
It probably will be, but there's still a little bit of unrest.
Ronaldo. Yeah, there'll be a... Yeah. I mean, on Ronaldo, I think fair play to him, because in a struggling team, he's come and he's delivered. I mean, I think it's now time to break the umbilical cord, and you have to move on. And whether that frees up wages, whatever, I think you need to sort of build, because he's huge, and I think he's been fantastic this season. The goals particularly show that. But in terms of... I mean, I would go all out to get Declan Rice, and I'd make him captain. Because, I mean, I know him through England. I've interviewed him at West Ham, and he is he will bleed for the team, and he's got that mindset. He's intelligent. You can see how he's developing. But don't forget, you are the club with one of the most famous academies probably in the world, top 3 academies in the world. Look within as well. Give the kids a chance. Was it Hannibal the other night?
Yeah.
I know he probably went a little bit over the top, but at least it looked like he cared.
Showed a little bit of passion, didn't he? It's interesting that you mentioned De Gea. De Gea is someone that kind of will probably be player of the year. People are also looking at keeper as a position that apparently we might need to improve on if Ten Hag does come in, because of the difference in philosophy. People criticise De Gea and his distribution and his kind of command of his area. But obviously he's a great shot stopper. What do you think the situation with Dean Henderson should be? Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, a group of us spoke to Dean Henderson on England duty just before he came back here, and he said, I think we were out in Iceland, and he said that, well, I'm going to come back and try and take De Gea's place, because, I believe in myself. There's a fantastic goalkeeper there. Excuse me. I mean, he's got the mentality to play for Manchester United. He's tough, but he's too good to be sitting on the bench. So I don't know what happens with him. Can I say goalkeeper is not your concern?
That's what I've been reiterating.
I could name 10 other positions which are more concerned than
which is a shame,
David
because De Gea might not be of the standard we need to win Premier League titles, but
I
like
see
you said,
people's
he's not
arguments
at the top of the
against
list
him, but,
whatsoever, is he?
No.
Just quickly on people who maybe higher up the list, you talk about giving Declan Rice the captain's armband. Obviously that puts Harry Maguire in the conversation by default. Do you not worry that, or maybe you won't worry if you're not a United fan, but as a United fan, I kind of worry that if we do go with Rice or Kane, you are just taking that 80 million price tag that was on Maguire and the 90 million price tag that was on Pogba and putting that pressure on the 150 million for Rice. And now not only have you got a player that is still working through his potential, but now has the pressure of being United's biggest ever signing, the biggest signing for the biggest club. Is it almost is that not almost too much pressure to put on one player?
Not if
you think he can handle that?
Not if you know Declan Rice.
Well, I don't. So
he's
tell
a
me.
real character. He's absolutely brilliant. He's got a fantastic sense of humour. He's incredibly popular. He's very conscientious. So just like little things, I did an interview with him at the training ground on Zoom during the pandemic, and it was a 40-minute one, and he was fantastic. He just sort of talked. He talked so intelligently, so passionately, and then I said, listen, thanks for the 40 minutes or whatever. And he said, listen, I've got a bit more of training to do, but can we continue? Because there are a couple more things I want to say. And you get value for money with Declan. Excuse me, whether it's in an interview, whether it's on the pitch. If there's one England player who I could point out at the moment who would have the personality to play for your club and cope with a huge fee, it would be Declan Rice. He's got that personality. Look at the way he's developed it. Obviously he's got Mark Noble. Mark Noble is just brilliant with him, but he's tough. He could handle it. He would, the 150 million, he would just laugh. He would just say, I haven't set that fee if people think I'm worth that much. But look, West Ham are going to fight to keep him.
Especially if they would qualify for the Champions League, if they end up winning the Europa League. Well, I think Declan Rice could be someone that could be part of the cultural reset that needs to happen at Manchester United at the moment. Gary Neville did say something quite interesting though about these big money signings that United have been doing recently, and the huge wages. Obviously, United have 4 of the top 5 earners in the league. It does kind of set a precedent where they are undermining the managers that do actually go to the club. For example, obviously I mentioned it to you before, it's almost like the way that they're kind of commercially presented when we do make these big money signings is they kind of elevate it above the manager.
Yeah.
And then it kind of sets that whole precedent of there not being control. You know, when you're watching a City team or you're watching a Liverpool team, you can kind of see that's a Pep team, that's a Klopp team, he has command, whereas it's very kind of player-orientated at Manchester United, where they seem to hold a little bit too much power. So someone like a Declan Rice, who you do say has all the characteristics, and he's not going to be like a poison chalice, like which a few of the players that United have signed recently have been. I think it's something that I would agree with happening. It's just I'm kind of conscious about the price tag and whether Declan Rice will probably come in, be captain, change life, be starting CDM for us, and we do better. But then, are we able to kind of improve enough around him is my concern.
Well, first, because of his mentality, his work ethic, and his influence on the pitch, he will improve people around you. So, you know, that's a plus. I think if Ten Hag and Manchester United almost have a statement of intent with Declan Rice coming in, you're then going to get other players who are going to come on board and because they can see things happening. Look, I take your point about the dressing room, the players, and player power, you know, casting a long shadow, and that's difficult for managers. But I think Ten Hag can deal with that. I think he's got that personality. Everything about that's wrong with Manchester United is about mindset. And I just think Ten Hag, Declan Rice, someone focused like Harry Kane, I mean, I would be surprised if Calvin Phillips moved at the moment, but you know, he's he's very ambitious, and Manchester United are a huge club, but it'd be difficult for him to leave Leeds, given how much it's in his blood. But he would have no problem. You know, he would have no problem walking out the tunnel corner, looking to the left and seeing that great singing section you've got there. He would be inspired by that. Whereas you see some of the Manchester United players now, they get withdrawn, inhibited by it.
Scary stuff. Hopefully a lot to look forward to over the summer. It's a big summer regardless. And I think, like you said about Declan Rice, one of the reasons why it's scary spending that much money on players because we can't get anyone else, but that's why it's going to take multiple years for us to rebuild, because to buy the players we need can't really be done in one summer, can it? So
it's because obviously Henry mentioned how kind of forefront Rangnick is in his press conferences, and he did come out and then say that there might be 10 players in terms of going in and out. That kind of made people think that there's going to be a plethora of players coming in and out the door at United. Obviously, we know Pogba's likely leaving, Cavani, Matic, Mata, Phil Jones, Lingard. There's going to be a bit of a mass exodus as it is. So people thought there was going to have to be a few players brought in at probably smaller price tags to kind of fill the void, rather than 8 players out and then 1 in, and then United's depth isn't that great. But I think Declan Rice is a great player. I was actually surprised at how young he was. I didn't realise he was that young. He just kind of gives off a vibe of being a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and I think he's even got levels to go to.
Yeah, you guys will love him if he comes here with his smile, with his energy, and it hurts. You know, when West Ham don't do well, when England don't do well, it really hurts. So he would be good. But again, I have no inside information on whether he wants to leave, whether he will leave. The one thing I do know is that West Ham will fight to keep him, whether that's a new contract. But all those names you mentioned, I mean, this is the mismanagement of Manchester United. It's not simply being in the dugout. It's been in the football department and clearly in the boardroom, that all these contracts, all these players haven't been, moved on earlier. Look at, again, if I can mention Liverpool, and really this is tough love. This is difficult for you guys. But you look at Liverpool, you look at as Klopp's about to sign a new contract. You look at the team is changing from the team that won the Premier League and the Champions League. Younger players are coming in. Luis Diaz is coming in, and Firmino, is he going to last? You have to have that change, and that's what Ferguson was an absolute genius at it. He used to do it with his coaches. He used to do it with his players. The moment he saw a player where he felt it was a Stam or an Ince or whatever, he knew when to change, and he would act. And Manchester United have got to get back to that. Actually, acting in advance rather than expensively late.
just quickly before you go, the Glazers situation at United, I almost don't even want to call it a situation because it is the situation, really, isn't it?
It's a scandal.
Underbelly.
What do you make of this sort of continued unrest towards the Glazers? Are you surprised by that? Are you
No.
Because the protest last week, protest this week. I think some other teams' fans look at United and go, well, they've spent money, what's the problem? I think was it Jamie Carragher saying that the other day on the TV. To a lot of people, the idea is they've spent some money, why are you so annoyed? Obviously, you don't necessarily agree with that.
I think the Glazers are a disgrace, and I've had run-ins with them since 2005 when they had that fateful cup of tea with the FA, and the FA said, you will be nice to Manchester United, they're a national institution, and the Glazers sort of nodded their head in that slightly geeky way. And no, I just think they're an embarrassment. I just think that you've got a great club like this. I'm not a Manchester United fan, but your owners should have a genuine interest in what goes on the field. And I don't think the Glazers do. I'm not sure I'm sure they are aware of results, but the main results they're interested in are in the stock exchange. I didn't like the way they bought it with the picks. I think that in a maybe more fan militant country than England, I think there would have been more demonstrations. But I do think the Manchester United fans, obviously green and gold and everything onwards, I think they've been absolutely fantastic. As long as it stays within the law, people keep off the pitch. I just think demonstrate as much as you can, because I think that, and I say this as someone who covers loads of clubs, because the European Super League will come back, and it will come from Florida, and it will come from Boston. It will be John W. Henry and one of the Glazers will be driving it, and they'll be talking to Madrid and maybe a couple of the Italian clubs, and they will be back. And I just think one of the greatest moments last year was the fans' revolt against the European Super League. And it was collective, it was Chelsea, it was even, Liverpool were playing at Leeds, and Leeds fans were backing the Liverpool fans against the Manchester United fans were huge. And I think the Glazers are the greatest advertisement for an independent regulator, which eventually will come in. But we've got to fight these guys. Whether it's me with my, very small laptop, or you with your your huge audience here, and, the power of your voice on social media and within grounds. The Glazers, people like the Glazers, those sort of owners, are dangerous to English football. They threaten my local non-league club. They were threatened by what the Glazers tried to do last year, and the other plotters. So, yeah, absolutely. Keep up the fight against them.
Agreed.
Great stuff. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for coming down, Henry. Nice to finally have you in the studio.
Yes. In the James Bond lair.
Yeah, in the lair. Thank you very much.
Magic happens.
Thank you to everyone at home for watching. Thank you to Jay for letting me step in and chat to Henry Winter as well. Cheers, Ronaldo. Obviously, you're the mainstay on the Tier 1 podcast. Thanks for having me, actually. Has it been all right?
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good.
Nah, to be fair, it's been asking to meet Henry for a while anyway. So
yeah, exactly. Thank you for watching at home. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in a bit.